Hello, everybody. My name's Kai, and welcome back to Warframe. First off, happy holidays. I am actually recording this on December 25th, so it is Christmas for me, but regardless of what holiday you celebrate, again, happy holidays. Today, in this video, we will be taking a look at the Phantasma Prime. Phantasma Prime is Revenant Prime, or just Revenant's signature weapon, but besides it being his, it is actually one of the strongest weapons in the entire game, alongside even just the base Phantasma. This weapon is an absolute status monster. So let's go hop into Sim. I can show you how to build the Phantasma so that you can do literally any content in the game. Here we are in the simulacrum. Now, one thing I want you to note is that I've swapped over to a test caliber, just an Excalibur, that has 0 mods or arcanes on him that could not in any way affect the damage of the Phantasma besides the mods on it alone, just so that you know you can use this on any frame and your mileage will only be better if you buff it with your frame. I also have no mods on my Phantasma, which means that right now would be a great time to take a peek at its stats. So, starting off with its damage and its primary fire, because it possesses two fiery modes, a primary and an alt fire. The primary fire has 11% critical chance, which means that the Phantasma is not a critical weapon. It's a very, very good critical weapon, but it requires outside buffs from your Warframe, which we're not going to be demonstrating here, so that you can take this build and use it on any frame. I'll show a couple of those synergies later, but right now, with a crit chance of 11 and a crit multiplier of 1.9, both under average, especially the critical chance, not a great crit weapon. The status chance of 22.2 is not bad though, because again, this is a shotgun, so status slash projectile, which means that every single projectile you have has independent stats, which means that at the base multi-shot of 6, this status chance is actually around 120. So this is a lot better than it currently looks. And now it does deal base impact and radiation damage for a total of 90. And moving on to the secondary fire. The secondary fire has a bit of an odd gimmick where you can charge it up or you can just fire it immediately. Now, I'll be honest with you. The secondary fire is pretty terrible because crit chance of 3 and crit multiplier of 1.5. Higher status, but it's only one projectile. No one really uses the secondary fire. I mean, I'll go over it a little bit more when I demonstrate the weapon, but yeah. So the primary fire is the Phantasma's main use. Let's go see it on some enemies. Before we actually get to testing on the enemies, I'll demonstrate both of the firing modes and the Phantasma. So the primary fire mode is a beam weapon that seemingly increases the screen shake as you continue to fire it. Bit odd. I'm not really that big of a fan of it, and I have screen shake turned off, but it's there. What are you going to do about it? So the primary fire is again a beam with a lot of multi-shot, because as you can see, it is shooting out multiple beams at once. And the secondary fire, you can hold down to charge and launch that, or you can just tap it to shoot a smaller one, or just half charge. And yeah, secondary fire again though is really not that great, and obviously the weapon has these custom animations when you're doing these, which look really, really cool. Now, on these corrupted heavy gunners, you will see that the Phantasma has a base 20 meters of range, so I can hit from here but not from here, or I shouldn't be able to necessarily unless the counter is lying to me, which it seemingly so is. But regardless, 20 meters of base range on the Phantasma that can obviously be made longer with Sinister Reach or Galvanized Acceleration, I think it is, the one that gives you more beam length on kill. And then on these enemies, you will see that it churns out status very, very quick. We almost maxed out on status effects on this Corrupted Heavy Gunner with no mods. It also shoots pretty fast and has a very, very tiny mag of just 11 when not using it on Revenant. Just remove this. But as you can see, the reload is very quick at around 0.5 or 0.6 seconds. So you won't really be noticing the 0.5 second downtime in shooting, especially when you put on arcanes such as Primary Merciless or just use the reloader mods for shotguns. Now that you have a better understanding of the Phantasma itself, let's talk about how you would like to mod it. The first and probably easiest thing to guess is that yes, we're using Galvanized Hell and Galvanized Savvy. Pretty much every single build in the game wants multi-shot, besides a couple very specific things, and this just grants you, at max, 210 multi-shot. There is not anything to dislike about this. Actually, is it 210? Might be even higher than that. But Galvanized Savvy is also great because, one, it increases your status chance. It also gives you on kill plus 40% direct damage, which is just base, just additive damage per status type, affecting the target for 20 seconds. and this stacks to 2 times. So you get 80% direct damage per status type affecting the target for 20 seconds. This is like condition overload for guns. For a weapon such as the Phantasma, which will be applying impact and radiation and 2 other status effects, this is phenomenal because it gives us 320% more base damage to go alongside our arcanes and means we don't need to use something like point blank. Speaking of arcanes though, what arcane do you want to use on the Phantasma? Merciless. You could make an argument for Deadhead when you run a raw damage build, but Merciless is great because it gives you that extra reload speed. It does only bring it down from 0.5 to 0.4, but extra reload speed is extra reload speed, and that means more damage because you're spending less time sitting there not shooting the enemies. Deadhead obviously gives you a headshot multiplier, and that's great, but the Phantasma kills with status effects a lot of the time, especially when you get into those later stages of the game where you need to run Viral Slash, which I will show later. You cannot get stacks on Deadhead from that, so I just choose Merciless as it's all around really, really great. Considering that the Phantasma is a status monster, as I said before, what elements do you want to run on it so that you can absolutely destroy the first couple hundred levels of Steel Path before you need to switch to that tried and true Viral Slash build? Those would be Corrosive and Heat. Now, you can only apply up to 10 Corrosive stacks on a target to reduce up to 80% of their armor, but Heat stacks can go pretty much infinitely, and the Phantasma spits out so many Heat stacks, it is absolutely ridiculous. As in, let me put on the heat mods that I typically use. Let's just use this right now. And if we come up to some enemies over here, stay with them. Oh, what is that? 50 heat procs already? Yeah. 50 heat procs. 93. 144. I mean, that is a lot of heat procs. And obviously, the corrosives that we would be getting would be at 10 from literally the first, like, 3 bullets. Because the Phantasma has wild multi-shot because it's a shotgun. And all of those have an independent status chance of 53 with just this one mod. For corrosive, I recommend you use Toxic Barrage and Primed Charge Shell. I do not have Primed Charge Shell, but if you do, definitely use it here. Now, due to how due to how elements mix in general when you mod on a weapon, if you're unaware, if I were to put Scattering Inferno here, heat and electricity would combine first before these two combine. Just make sure that you have your toxin mod and then your electricity mod in this order, and then put your heat last. The simplest way to do it would just be to put heat here and any of your other mods in any of the other spots. The next thing that we are going to want on our Phantasma is a little bit of fire rate. Using Shotgun Barrage, we can achieve that, a 90% fire rate buff. There's another choice here, though. The mod Repeater Clip. It drops from Nightmare Missions, and I do not have it because I don't really play Nightmare Missions. But it gives you a 105 fire rate increase when you reload. And you're going to be reloading very consistently on the Phantasma because it has a small bag, but it also has a very fast reload, which means that you will have 100% uptime on the buff from Repeater Clip and makes that a better mod than Shotgun Barrage in this place. So use that if you have it. Other fire rate mods, such as Frail Momentum, are, as you can see here, a 90% fire rate buff, which is what Shotgun Barrage does. And while these two can stack, it's got a negative 15 damage. I don't know why DE has these two at the same value. Can we make this 120? Can we make this 110? Like, this mod is absolutely terrible right now. But that's besides the point. Now, running these 6 mods here are kind of going to be on every Phantasma build. These next 2 slots are where things start to change a little bit. Because, as you see later in the video, I have a couple builds that we could show. One of those being a crit build. I said earlier that Phantasma is not a great crit weapon, but you can still build it for crit if you then use outside Warframe buffs to increase the crit chance and multiplier. Those 2 crit mods being critical, Primed Ravage and Critical Deceleration. Obviously, when you use those Critical Deceleration, we'll bring this to a 33% crit chance, and this is sitting at a nice 3.8. And that's usable, but it's not necessary at like the first couple hours of Steel Path unless you are using Viral Slash, which you shouldn't be unless you're trying to go above level 1000, because that's where that starts to actually scale better than just Corrosive Heat. So if we are not using any crit mods here, with these 2 mod slots open, the best thing that I actually recommend next is to use a Bane mod. Obviously, a primed Bane will do you better than just a normal one, but since you're going to be using so many status effects here, you might as well use one of these because it just double dips on all the procs and makes them do even more damage than they already do. Here in this last slot, you actually have even more choices than for this one, because there's not very many fantastic choices here. What I tend to do is run another heat mod, Incendiary Coat here, to get my chances of proccing heat. I actually need to reorganize these now. Here we go, just to keep them, the elements mixing correctly, at the same level as my corrosive, because you want to be getting as many heat status effects as possible. This also means that if you are running the primed version, you will have less, but it shoots out so much that it's not that big of a deal. Anyways, you can also use mods such as Blaze, things like that. But again, in this last slot where I would use Incendiary Coat, you can use Point Blank if you'd like. You can use Vigilante Armament, Tactical Pump, even though this only gives a slight bump in your reload from 0.4 to 0.3. There's a lot of options to use instead of this last heat mod. I use this because more heat procs is more damage over something like Vigilante Armament, because that extra multi-shot is not really needed because things just kind of die. And then in the last slot, for your X-List, I recommend you use Fatal Acceleration or Galvanized Acceleration, because that will increase your projectile range by 90%, which is a lot better than the just 40 you get here for Fatal Acceleration. But if you don't have that, use this. I actually don't know why I don't have a Galvanized Acceleration. I thought that I did. But regardless, this is the Phantasma build. Let's go show it on some enemies. I'm going to be real with you guys. The Phantasma is a fantastic weapon that will absolutely demolish any content you put it up to a certain point, though. This build, specifically the corrosive heat one, will not scale super well into those contents where you're thousands and thousands of levels on your enemies. Right there, you need to use something like Viral Slash, which I'll show later. And without any outside Warframe buffs, it drops off a little bit. But for the first 2 hours of Steel Path, which is what I make my content for, this build absolutely annihilates. So let's get to building it up, because it is a galvanized build that also is using Primary Merciless, so the stacks take a little while to build. But you'll see that once they do, things start to get a little out of hand. The Phantasma also has infinite body punch through, so we can just mow through enemies like this. And it's pretty ridiculous. And the alt fire is not too terrible. I mean, that's actually pretty pathetic damage, but like, when it hits a crit, it actually does a decent amount of damage. But there's no reason to use it. Just use the primary fire. It's a lot better. That right there is the Phantasma build for the first couple hours of Steel Path content, and it'll do you just fine. But if you want to scale even higher, you need to use Viral Slash, because it just completely bypasses enemies' armor, and the damage scales a lot better than Corrosive Heat. So, that looks like this. Obviously, we're building for crit, because we want crit for our 100 munitions procs, and also to increase the damage. We are using cleanse mods here, because those double dip on our slash procs, and then obviously in this last slot, you would want to use something like 100 munitions to get your slash in general. This will not kill as fast as the other build at the first couple hours of Steel Path, but once you get to the enemies in the levels of 1000 up, it will do a lot better than the previous one. Earlier when I mentioned Warframe buffs, I was talking specifically about Harrow, because Harrow buffs the ever-living hell out of all of your weapons through Penance and Covenant. So, if we just use that Corrosive Heat build right now, which obviously is better for the beginning of Steel Path and the end, but on these enemies, and we pop our Covenant, wait for this damage prevented to run out real quick. Kind of forgot that I have a long duration build on my hero. Is he still holding his durable? Looks like he is. But we can even start killing not ability from stacks. But once we get that crit chance... Oh, oh wow, they don't even stand a chance. It's so funny to watch, they just get deleted, and it even makes the alt fire not terrible. Although, I mean, compared to the primary, it's still absolutely nothing, but like, you know, I didn't even use my other ability there to buff my fire rate and reload speed, which would look... It makes the reloads instant. That's so funny. It literally doesn't even need to reload. Yeah, Harrow might be a really good frame to use this weapon on. That is the build for the Phantasma. So, in the Steel Path, we are going to hop on Revenant, the actual user of the Phantasma Prime in the lore, and also the person who gets an increased magazine capacity when he is using it from 11 to 15. Not a huge buff, but a buff regardless. Let's go do some Steel Paths with this absolute monster of a weapon. Here we are in Selkie on Sedna. This is actually not Mott in the Void, which is typically my favorite place to test things, but that's because I'm using a Bane of Grineer mod and not a Bane of Corrupted mod. So obviously I want to use it against the Grineer, and I'm not grinding for the anti-corrupted mods because they come from defection, and that's a terrible game mode. I'm also using a Panzer Volpafila because it doesn't die, although if you are building for that crit chance, feel free to use a Darzek bot, because that gives another 45. Or it might be 65, I honestly kind of forgot. Now, Revenant himself is just really strong, because he's kind of invulnerable, but like, as you can see here, we're just killing. Not even a struggle for this thing, in the slightest. Revenant's also a nice frame to do this. Wait, do I not have any mods on my Revenant? What? Yo, I think I don't have mods on my Rev. Whoops. Yes, I do not have any mods on my Rev. Oh god. Well, good thing he's still invulnerable, but I got a couple less Mesmer skin charges. But yeah, you can clearly tell that oh. Okay, alright. Almost went bad there. But the Steel Path is not a struggle for the Phantasma at all. It's a very strong weapon. An Acolyte is spawning now, and the one thing that I haven't said yet is that the Phantasma is not a great weapon for killing Acolytes. That's because it depends on its status procs to kill. And Acolytes can only take up to 4 status procs, which means that the heat procs that the Phantasma needs to kill cannot stack up. And it'll take a very, very long time to kill Angst right here. So, the one downside of this weapon is that it cannot kill Acolytes for shit. But if we just pull out our Epitaph and use our Kratos. I don't even have a build on my Kratos right now. You know, if we try to meme a little bit with the alt fire, actually, you'll see it's not too terrible. And if I charge it up, it should actually deal some semi-decent damage. And you can also just kind of spam it to just, like, nuke a little bit more, if you can even call this really a nuke. It's not awful, but it is a thing that it can do, so, I mean, you might as well use it if you have it. And I'm going to call it here for the Phantasma video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the support. Just clicking on this video and giving it a view is seriously doing a lot. Now, if you don't want to hear me talk for the next minute and a half, because I have a little bit of things that I want to say, feel free to click off here. Again, I appreciate you so much. Thank you. Now, I am actually recording this video on Christmas, and I'm at 996 subs as of a couple minutes ago. And I might hit 1,000 subs today, which would be crazy. One, because it's Christmas, and also because, like, hitting 1,000 subs. You know, I looked at the math earlier, and actually it's like 0.4% of people on YouTube have 1,000 subs or more, and then that number is like 0.02 have 10,000 or more. Not that I'm saying that, oh my god, I need 10,000 subs, but like, I started YouTube at the beginning of November, and to already be here and have a community that follows me around and likes my videos and my content, and, you know, will come to me when I live stream, which I'll be doing in about an hour from uploading this video, so come hang out with me if you'd like. I love to play with my viewers. But regardless, I'm gonna hit 1,000 subs, and that's just like a crazy big milestone, because I never really thought that I would be able to get there, but here I am, and I'm doing it, and it's working out. So yeah, thank you guys so much. You are what make this possible, and I really appreciate it. Okay, and I'll see you later. Peace.